What variables contribute to the likelihood of consuming breakfast daily? By Samantha Johnson. The likelihood of individuals to eat breakfast. The research topic that I chose is the healthy dietary habits like eating breakfast in adults that are carried over from childhood. According to Nutrition and Dietetics, breakfast is defined as the consumption of any food between the hours of 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. This is based on a 24-hour diet cycle. The first meal of the day comes after the longest period of the 24-hour cycle where no food is consumed. Metabolism is slowed down during rest. Breakfast is a key health benefactor and is labeled the most important meal of the day. The way an individual starts their day is key to how their body will perform demanded tasks. Maternal or paternal childhoods. These habits could also likely be a result of parental influence and the difference in households that have a majority maternal influence versus households that have a majority paternal influence. According to the Journal of Marriage and Family, research has shown that single mothers and single fathers raising children have different structural routines and patterns that change the dynamics of their family structure. Female caretakers and male caretakers have different ideas on what is necessary in parenting and their idea of raising adults. Male caretakers tend to be more straightforward in their take on parenting. There is a task that needs to be done, and when it is done, the job is finished. Females are more likely to take a more nurturing approach as they are more emotionally driven thinkers. This will drive the mother to make her parenting decisions based on her emotions and the thought that everything she does in parenting will affect her children in a long-term way. This leads to the first hypothesis in my research, considering if there is a relationship between maternal or paternal-led childhoods and the daily consumption of breakfast. Daily schedules. The older an individual gets, the more that individual turns to caffeinated beverages during their morning routines rather than partaking in full meal for breakfast. Most people who are in the busiest times of their life or early in their careers will partake in the consumption of coffee or sodas in the morning time and skip a meal. Age, work schedule, and school schedule could be related variables. The busiest time of the day for an individual may influence whether or not they partake in the consumption of breakfast. Age is also considered in relation to daily schedule because the older an individual is, the more likely that their busy schedule will result in burnout. According to the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, burnout, or the feeling of being overwhelmed and exhausted by your daily routine, can have a major influence on the consumption of breakfast. These variables, work schedule, school schedule, may be overwhelming for the individual if they're not spread out far enough in daily routine. Being too overwhelmed by your daily schedule and getting the feeling of being burned out have been clinically shown to have great influence on eating disorders, as well as the habit of skipping meals like breakfast. This leads to the second hypothesis, which is considering the relationship between daily active schedules and making breakfast a daily habit. The present study. Students have been studies have been conducted on the effects of breakfast, of the lives and daily performance of individuals who do and do not consume breakfast. Conflicting variables can deter individuals from taking care of daily health needs like eating breakfast. Burnout can be summed up as the after effect of an overly busy daily routine. Burnout can cause negative effects on dietary habits. It also has been determined through study that age and childhood structure can influence healthy dietary habits as well. The question is, with these variables present, which individuals are more likely to consume breakfast daily? Which variables make the greatest impact? The purpose of this study is to answer these questions. Participants. So the goal of this study was to obtain at least 30 participants, but it was not reached. Instead, I received results from 20 participants from the survey, breakfast and influencing variables. The participants in the study completed a survey that included informed consent, seen in Appendix A, and questions with multiple choice answers, seen in Appendix B. The survey is called Breakfast and Influencing Variables. The survey questioned the participants' age range, work schedule, school schedule, and if they had maternal or paternal-led childhood. The correlation method of using surveys was implemented to collect such data from LSUA students. The correlation method means that the independent variable will not be manipulated. No experimental research will be conducted. Age, work schedule, school schedule, and maternal or paternal childhoods are the independent variable in this study. The dependent variable is the consumption of breakfast. Procedures. The materials in this study were placed on surveymonkey.com. They were then sent to Dr. Elder, who distributed the surveymonkey.com link to the LSUA student participants. The participants in this study were asked to give informed consent, and once doing so, the participants completed the survey. The survey was identical for each participant in this study. The first question asked the participant's age range, then work schedule, then school schedule. The question pertaining to maternal or paternal-led childhoods, and then if they consumed breakfast daily. The data collected from the participants in the survey was then used in a chi-square of independence. Predictions. Predictions were that the participants would have an age range between 18 and 30 years of age, and the majority of the participants would have active daily schedules. It was also predicted that the majority of participants will have had maternal childhoods. Hypothesis description. The first hypothesis in my research considered the relationship between maternal-led or paternal-led childhoods and the daily consumption of breakfast. By separating data by those who indicated that they had a maternal-led childhood, paternal-led childhood, or both, and then comparing data for each that stated yes or no for making breakfast a daily habit. I then interpreted if there were any correlation between maternal or paternal upbringing and eating breakfast daily. The second hypothesis considered the relationship between individuals who have active morning routines and the consumption of breakfast. By separating data by those who stated yes or no to making breakfast a daily habit, and then comparing data from each variable that would influence the participants' most active times of day, I would then be able to interpret the correlation between active daily schedules and making breakfast a daily habit. Each hypothesis will be determined by analyzing the data collected and interpreting what variables have influence on making breakfast a daily habit. For the first hypothesis, the charts below indicate the results of data collected for the first hypothesis. Again, the first hypothesis considers the relationship between maternal-led or paternal-led childhoods and the daily consumption of breakfast. The data for each response was separated by those who indicated yes or no to eating breakfast daily. The first chart indicates that for those who do eat breakfast daily, 5 participants chose maternal-led childhoods. 2 participants had paternal-led childhoods, and 3 participants had both. The second chart indicates that for those who do not eat breakfast daily, 4 participants had maternal-led childhoods, and 2 participants had paternal childhoods, and 6 had both. The data for the second hypothesis. The next set of charts below indicate that the results for the second hypothesis, that again, the second hypothesis considers the relationship between active daily schedules and the making breakfast a daily habit. The data for each response was separated by those who indicated yes to eating breakfast daily and by those who indicated no to eating breakfast daily. The first age chart is data from participants who indicated yes to eating breakfast daily. Age is considered because a person's age can affect how active their schedules may be. And out of those participants, 2 stated that they were between the ages of 22 and 25. 2 stated that they were between the ages of 26 and 29. And 5 stated that they were 30 years old or older. And the second age chart is data from participants who indicated no to eating breakfast daily. Out of those participants, 1 stated that they were between the ages of 18 and 21. 4 stated that they were between the ages of 22 and 25. 1 stated that they were between the ages of 26 and 29, and 6 stated that they were 30 years old or older. The first chart on the next set indicates daily activity and yes to breakfast. In this data, 4 participants work first shift, 3 participants are unemployed, 2 participants have early classes, and 6 participants have a scattered school schedule. The second chart indicates daily activity and no to breakfast. In this data, 3 participants said that they work first shift. 4 participants stated that they are unemployed, and 12 participants stated that they have a scattered class schedule. And here are the first set of graphs indicating yes to breakfast and age, and no to breakfast and age. And the second set of charts are for daily activity and yes to breakfast, and daily activity and no to breakfast. Okay, so discussion. The first hypothesis considers the relationship between maternal-led or paternal-led childhoods in the daily consumption of breakfast. Upon data analysis, it was found that the participants who stated yes to daily consumption of breakfast included 5 participants who had maternal-led childhoods, 2 participants who had paternal-led childhoods, and 3 who had both. In both sets of results, a mother was present, and paternal-led childhoods were the lowest number. Previous research about the parenting styles of mothers versus fathers showed that mothers were more emotional-driven thinkers and implement this into their parenting styles by teaching their children to practice habits that will affect them positively in the future. Fathers, however, are logical thinkers and address the problem that is current. Male caretakers scored lower in a test of nurturing. After reviewing my own results and conducting a chi-square of independence, I will accept the null hypothesis that there is a correlation between relationship of maternal-led childhoods, paternal-led childhoods, or both, and the daily consumption of breakfast. That data is shown below in that chi-square of independence. And you'll see there that the p-value equaled to 0.94, which is, of course, greater than the standard of 0.05, which is why we accept the null hypothesis. The second hypothesis considers the relationship between daily active schedules and making breakfast a daily habit. Upon data analysis, it was found in both sets of data that said yes to the daily consumption of breakfast and no to the daily consumption of breakfast that the majority of participants were 30 years or older. The results did not give enough information to determine if age was an influencing variable. It was also found that none of the participants participated in late classes or second or third shift schedules for work. In both sets of data for active daily schedules and yes to breakfast, and active daily schedules and no to breakfast, the highest number of responses went to those who have scattered class schedules. After considering previous research stated in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition about burnout, or the feeling of being overwhelmed and exhausted by your daily routine, it can have a major influence on the consumption of breakfast. It was found that if busy schedules are not spread out enough, then unhealthy eating habits can be developed. And of course, that is a result from burnout. The data that I collected showed that the number of those who have scattered school schedules and do not participate in the daily consumption of breakfast was twice the number of those who have scattered school schedules and do participate in the daily consumption of breakfast. It's also relevant to include that the majority of those who stated that they have scattered class schedules are also unemployed. So I will reject the null hypothesis that there is a relationship between active daily schedules and making breakfast a daily habit. Below is shown the chi-square of independence, and you can see that the p-value was equal to 0.02, which is less than the standard of 0.05, which is why we reject the null hypothesis. I found that there were limitations to my study by not receiving a large enough number of responses. If I had received more responses, the numbers would have been greater in size and easier to determine if there was a significance in results. If I could change the questioning to be more effective, I would instead ask participants if their childhood consisted of a stronger relationship with either their mother or their father. The current question only asks if they had maternal-led, paternal-led, or both-led childhoods. This could mean that either one or both parents were present in the household. Results may have been different if it was determined that the participants would have felt closer to one parent, thus wanting to model behavior after them. I would like to see more research done on this specific question. Here is a full list of references used in this PowerPoint. Appendix A displays the informed consent that participants responded to in the survey breakfast and influencing variables. Appendix B is the survey breakfast and influencing variables.